We are now talking about the Women's Decade. We are talking about what we want to achieve in terms of women leadership, of empowerment of women, of doing something what we want to do. And I'm very happy to have a great panel here. Cécilia Attias, what are you doing?
Hello, good morning. What I'm doing, I'm launching a foundation in New York, which is a foundation that helps other foundations and NGOs around the world. We are actually a platform that helps those fabulous persons that are on the field every day fighting for against women's issues. So we can provide funds, we can provide media exposure, we can help on strategic or logistic matters, and we're trying to do our best. There are so many fabulous people around that world which are trying to give a hand to the women in need that I think my duty now, after receiving a lot from life, is to give back a little bit. So we are a little bit around the world. We're working in Afghanistan for women wearing burqas, trying to give them some help, some knowledge to have the power and the will to make things move. And then we're working in Cambodia, we're working against women's trafficking. In Ukraine, we're working for battle and domestic violence in Europe, and any kinds of women's issues around the world.
What made you to do this?
Oh, it's a long story. I had been in politics for years in Europe, in France, and then I decided to move, and I spent a few months in Middle East, and then we decided to live in New York, and then I've learned a lot of being here. I mean, United States is a country where people are used to give and be very generous to others. So it's a fabulous lesson for me, and I think I have to help and to be there and try to give as well. And I don't know if you remember, but I've tried to help to release those nurses in Libya and that Palestinian doctor that were behind the bars for 9 years. And then when I came back and give them back to Bulgaria, their country, I've received a lot of mails and demands from all over the world of women in need that say, we trust you, maybe you can help. So I've decided to launch this foundation a year ago.
Great. You mentioned that the Americans are so generous and so energetic in helping. Here's Beth Brooke. Beth Brooke from Ernst & Young. Beth, I'm so proud that you're here on this panel because she was elected for among the most powerful women, 100 powerful women of America. So Beth, can you agree with what Cecilia said, that Americans more helpful?
Well, I do think Americans have a culture of giving, and a culture of giving back, a culture of helping, and that culture it's very rich to see the outpouring no matter what the personal circumstances, and you even see it among the people who have nothing will still find a way to give. It is just embedded in the culture.
And Beth, you are a giver. You're famous for mentoring young and mentoring women over a lot of companies. Can you tell us a little bit about the status quo, what you achieved the last 10 years? Then we talk later on what we want to achieve the next 10 years.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think, as we probably have all learned in working with young women, is that one of the biggest things you can give, one of the biggest gifts you can give is mentoring, because they just look up and they either don't see role models or they look up and what they see is one big black box and they think they don't fit in that box for whatever reason. They've been disrespected, disempowered. And so mentoring and helping them envision what they can be is probably one of the greatest gifts that we can give. And I think when we look back to the last decade, we've probably spent far too much time thinking about and talking about women as victims rather than looking forward and talking about women as economic engines of growth. And so I'm sure we'll talk more about that, but I do think that's what the next decade presents, is this incredible opportunity to change the conversation to women as economic engines of growth and how to do that.
Great. Gabi, longtime friend. I'm happy that you're here. What are you doing?
So I work for Hewlett-Packard, and I run the Office of Global Social Innovation. We bring R&D and new technologies to those areas that need it the most, that are economically challenged, and that could be anywhere in mature and emerging markets, like we go with UNESCO down to Africa and we try to stop the brain drain so that we keep the good minds, the professors there, and we bring grid and cloud technologies to Africa. So that's what I do. And I'm passionate about the topic of diversity because I think the world is in imbalance when it comes to the corporate world, basically. And so one example that really made it clear to me why this is so out of balance is I was at a customer meeting with some colleagues, and there were like the 8 of us, 7 men and I. That's usually how it looks when you go and you work in technology. And it was with a huge car manufacturer. And at the end of the meeting, these guys invited us to take a spin in a race car with 300 kilometers an hour around a racetrack. And I thought, I'm not really sure I want to do that. But I was smiling. I thought, contenance, who knows. We went over to the racetrack. The young driver comes up, and he said, oh, the next round of guests. I just had a guest that was really like a hero, very heroic. He had an apple in his hand. And he got into the car, and he said, once we were done with the rounds, the hand was in the apple. The apple was around the hand. The guy was white. And so I'm still thinking, do I want to do... I don't cut out cars and put them at the wall. I don't have a midlife crisis, and I don't own a sports car. So but then I saw these 14 eyes looking at me like, what's she going to do? And every man can decide for himself whether he wants to be considered a wimp, which I don't think he would be, but others would probably do that. But everybody was looking at me like, what is a woman doing in this case? And this is so many times the case. You're the only one in the boardroom, and then you are the woman, and the way you act, you represent a whole gender, which is totally ridiculous because there's so much creativity among women, and they're all so different, and they could bring so much more. Like, why exclude the other half from these type of meetings and discussions? And so, yeah, I have a bit of passion around this topic.
Randi.
Thanks. I work for Facebook. I lead many of our initiatives around nonprofits, politics, current events. So I feel very lucky. I work on the extremely warm and fuzzy positive side of the internet. And one thing we noticed was even back in 2004, 2005, when the site was only available to a few colleges in America, we noticed something powerful, and that was that people self-populated their interests, and out of the top 10 to 20 interests that we saw on Facebook, a vast majority of them were around nonprofits, causes, and volunteering. So it was even from the start, and we saw that this was a really huge part of people's lives.
Good, great. Ria Hendrikx, you've just arrived, got into a snowstorm.
Yeah,
welcome.
Not particular racetrack on the road today, but I recognize that. Ria Hendrikx, I work in HR as an executive vice president at Deutsche Post DHL. Probably kind of a different industry than my colleagues here around the table. As you know, Deutsche Post is a postal company. DHL is an express logistics company. And what we see when it comes down to women is that the industry is very much seen as a male-dominated industry, which makes it difficult to project our image towards women. But it's been a passion for me to work on these kind of projects for almost 20 years now. The sad thing about this is that I haven't seen too much changing. If you look at the programs that we started off 20 years ago, and that we do today, it's still, the topics still come back all over again, which is sad, but we've seen some changes, and I'm happy to be here to share some insights today.
Good. Since this panel is called the Female Decade, I am now asking you all, what is your vision? 10 years from now, where are we then? And how
I don't know, but
achieve this?
I just would like to make a remark. How come we have a female session?
Good question.
I really would like to know why we're the last ones, and in a small area, in a small room. I mean, there's no difference. I mean, there's no difference between men and women today. We're fighting for the same things. We're trying to do our best. We're trying to raise our kids, to have fabulous lives and to make the world better. I think to have a female session is quite strange. I have a wish that next year, females or women will be in every session and not in a special session. So,
shame on me, I'm blushing.
it's not on you. I mean, still the world is like this. I mean, you can go all over. I'm traveling a lot, and I can see that there is quite a big difference still today between female and male. And that is not possible. I have kids, and I want my daughters to have the same chances that my son. I want all the girls today to have the same possibility for the future than the boys. And that's going to be a huge, huge progress. And that's what I would like to help to do.
I just want to echo, to some extent, we need to quit talking about this because the research, I get so frustrated by groups that want to do more research to prove that what women are economically capable of. We don't need any new research. It is so abundantly clear. More women on boards, you get better financial performance of the organization. More women in senior management, the organization outperforms the others across a variety of spectrums. If you invest in women entrepreneurs, they will return 90% of their income to their families, to their communities, and you get a richer overall societal outcome. Power of diversity. When you have a group of homogeneous individuals of whatever kind competing against a diverse group of individuals, even a homogeneous group that is more highly skilled, the diverse group will outperform the homogeneous group every time. It's the power of diverse perspectives. So the case for women is so abundantly clear. As a society, we clearly don't value their participation for some reason because the pace of change is glacial. We just did a study, I lead a group called the White House Project. We just did a study around the world, 10 different sectors, to just show that the pace of progress for women is glacial. It is barely moving, and in some sectors actually moving backwards. We just need to stop and make change. I think it's very interesting, the progress that has been made here in Europe, with whether it's Norway, Spain, or potentially France, that getting ready to just say enough, to do the Nike strategy of just do it. Just say there's going to be 40% women on boards, we'll figure out how to get there, and then we'll see the difference in outcomes, because I really am convinced as a society that until people experience the difference, you can't convince them they need to actually experience. I know I've been on my own personal journey. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have sat on this panel. 10 years ago, I didn't even see the issue. I had to go through my own personal journey of sort of being the first woman on a board. What got me there wasn't going to keep me there. I was totally disrespected, voice not heard. And then as there became a critical mass of women, I started to say, interesting how our voice suddenly matters. We're having a different conversation around the table. And as a group, we're actually getting to better outcomes. And that's what it's all about, is better outcomes. So I'm just sort of the Nike strategy, which is we really do just need to do it.
Let's do it. Gabi, you've been the one who made me this panel, because you gave me so much insights how technology can help women.
Yeah, so just in case you were wondering, I did get into the car, and I did take 2 rounds. I asked for a second round, and we did some wall sliding, and it was a great experience, so I didn't regret it, but it wasn't my personal decision to do it. Anyway, I totally believe that we're at a point of turning point, I'd almost say. And as I look forward, and I just did that because I realized we had last year 70 years of HP's history, and I had to do a lot of work around that. And so as I looked at all of these changes, and you always have to understand the past if you want to take a look at what's going to happen in the future, that fundamentally changed the way we live, are happening right now. If I take a look at how business models have changed just in the last few years, how we put RFPs out to the web. When I used to do some work in marketing and I needed to get a logo, I'd just go to the agency and we'd meet and we'd go back and they'd bring more proposals and back and forth. And by the time you were done, it would be like in the case, and I like to use that because it's such a good example of the London Olympics. If you've seen that logo, it could give you a brain seizure. But they did pay $800,000 for it, and this is a traditional business model. You could just put an RFP out to the web and peer crowdsource services from designers that give you better work for $499. And that's not $499,000, that's $499. And so the margins are changing. They're changing from the point that you procure research and how you do distribution. The whole chain is changing. So I think personally that those that understand how to work these new business models will be successful, and it increasingly doesn't matter whether you're dark or light or old or young or white or, I don't know, female or male, because a lot of these things are invisible. And if you pair that with the fact that we get more and more mobile and you don't even see who you work with and work for, and I'm not saying all of these things are great, I'm just saying this is how it is. I don't have an office, I'm totally mobile, and even as a VP of the company, you know, I don't have my corner office or anything with the assistant that brings the coffee. That just doesn't exist. I do all of that myself. I log in wherever I go. And you project that further out. Why should there be boardroom meetings the way they are today? Why should schools function the way they do today? So I personally think it's the decade for folks, for anybody going forward. We still have the boardroom issues today, and I think there's still work to be done on coaching, mentoring, and all of these good things, because it's taken us 70 years to get from the first woman that sat on the Coca-Cola board to having 13% of women on boards in the US and 11 in Europe, so that's totally ridiculous. But I think going forward, I think we females, you know, there are more females coming out of universities than males. They have a fantastic chance. I mean, they just need to grasp it. It's all about, you know, using the education, having the right motivation, and have people that show them the way or being inspired early on. And then I think, you know, I have boys at home. I need to make sure that they understand what's going on, honestly. That's how I feel about it.
But can I comment on that? The one thing, though, that where I would differ slightly is I don't think this problem is going to generationally fix itself. Because, even the 60% women coming out of universities around the world, and they enter the workforce, you know, about 60-40, but it never changes. They drop out when it comes to life choices, because our social programming still sends a very strong message that it is your choice, woman, not your choice, man, to stay at home, and the opting out continues.
I don't think everything is going to fix itself easily, but I do think the mobility and the flexibility is giving you a whole different set of choices. And I do think it's going to be tough. I'm not saying this is going to be easy and everything will fall into place, but you have the chance, you have a much better chance at having both a career and having a family going forward with the help of technology.
Yeah, if I may, I do agree with you for a big extent, but I think what we also need to realize, there's a lot of different industries out there that have... Oops. Somebody...
It happens every day.
Nothing.
It's a daily thing. There's somebody calling.
I ordered every day. Sorry, Ria.
It's okay, no problem, as long as everyone's still alive.
See, this is a woman's panel, and we're concerned about you.
Should we come? Someone would not like to hear this. Fall down.
She's okay. Looks like she's okay. There's a lot of traditional industries out there where you have, you know, huge blue-collar populations. They are not able to do their work in a mobile way. So we just have to realize that that's also still out there and will remain to be out there, I guess. But I do agree that, of course, you need to use all the possibilities that are available to make sure that we make ourselves more visible. But I think one important item for me, what I've noticed throughout the years in working with women, is that we also need to get self-confident. If women don't make it to the top, it's often because they feel that they can't do it, or they feel that they have this disbalance with their private situation, and they feel guilty about it. And that's something that we need to come across as well.
Yes, I just want to add something. I'm sorry, but don't you think women need help? I mean, we have 3 lives. We're women, we're mothers, and we're working women. I mean, we have to face those 3 lives at the same time. We need to be helped with the kids. We need to have special daycare. I mean, we need to be helped to organize. I mean, we are supposed to take care of those lives. I mean, the government and all the social, I don't know, you say in English, my French is still not very good. I mean, but in France I was fighting against that, because women who wanted to have a career, they don't know where to put their kids. They don't have special daycare for them. They are fighting to find someone to come home or to drop their babies or their infants somewhere. And they're supposed to be wives. I mean, they need help. We can, I mean, be as performing as the others, but we need to be just helped by the government, by the social responsibility. I mean, that's the base, I think.
I agree. Randi, you're on the edge of social change. Social networks are changing our lives, I think. How do you reflect on this, what we just heard?
Thanks. So something that was actually pretty shocking to me, we're actually headed to the World Economic Forum after this, and something we started last year was during some of the key sessions with global leaders, we actually ran real-time instant Facebook polls on the screen above them to see what people, hundreds of thousands, millions of people around the world thought on issues. This year we're actually doing a gender agenda session with CNBC there, and we've started running a few of the questions in preparation to see. So we asked people on Facebook this week, would you rather have a male or female boss? And what was the most interesting was that it was girls 13 to 17 who overwhelmingly said a male boss. So I think it starts early, the perception, and I think just education in schools is so important. But so that was shocking to me, but I do feel really inspired when I see a lot of the things that are going on online, especially just in the past year, what we've seen in Iran, what we've seen in India, women coming together. In Saudi Arabia, it was the first time that really women petitioned to drive and that it was actually brought to the forefront of the agenda again. So I think if you look maybe beyond our borders at some of the things that are happening, there is real change that's going on there.
But if I could pick up on that point and Cecilia's point, I do think public policy, this is where public policy matters and has to come in line with the perception of young girls, but the difficulties of the roles. I mean, and this goes back to my point about if you have women in leadership, different decisions get made and different issues get considered. For example, if you think back to the presidential election in the United States, at one point in time, there were 3 senators kind of still in the race: Senator McCain, Senator Obama, and Senator Clinton. I don't think it's a coincidence. They all have the power as senators to legislate. But I don't think it was a coincidence that the only one of those 3 that had ever introduced family-friendly policies in their role as senator, whether it's child care or equal pay for equal work, that it was Senator Clinton that was the one that had introduced those policies. That's no coincidence. She understood the difficulty of raising a child and not having those policies in place. So I think it's just further the case that when you have more women in political leadership roles or corporate roles, or anywhere, different decisions.
You need the balance, and I think when the quote that I read that if it had been the Lehman sisters, it wouldn't have happened. I'm convinced that with a better mix of people on the floor, you would have had different sort of situation to face, and people would have been more risk-taking, others less risk-taking, and you would just have avoided, some of the scenarios we all had to live through. So I believe
in the midst of, I haven't met one person who doesn't agree with that had it been Lehman Brothers and sisters, there would have been a better outcome. I actually think, now the G20 leaders, everybody's focused on financial reform, all of our financial institutions. The one thing that amazes me is they're going to institute all these regulations, but nobody's talking about if they would just mandate that there be more women on boards, more women in leadership, you could overcome a lot of these risk management and regulatory boundaries that they feel like they need to be put in place, because the different risk perspectives builds in a natural check and balance into the long-term sustainability of a company. But nobody talks about it.
No woman wants to be the one that's on there because it's mandated.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's the reaction to quote.
So how can we organize this, that we have more women in boards, more powerful women in the next 10 years? Well, what is the way to achieve this?
My view would be that we have to start with convincing the women that they can do it. And that we create the facilities for them to make the combination work, being a mother, being a worker, at the same time. So I think it has a lot to do with making sure that we support those women who think they can do it. And I think that there's still a lot of places out there where that doesn't happen enough.
I think
and
we
of course
need
it's not enough because, sorry, if I may, of course you also need to create awareness amongst the male population that that you can benefit from the fact, if there are women on board, that you have better results. What works well for us is, in our company, we've created sort of ambassadors for this topic, where women go out into their organization, talk to the male colleagues, but also take along their female colleagues and try to convince both parties that it works better if you combine these forces.
I think the male ally point is tremendous. This panel should have some men on it that speak as passionately about this issue as we do. And there are men that do. There are male CEOs who are just as passionate about this issue. We haven't helped to enable them, to give them air cover in a way, to empower them, but we could and we should.
Is there a man in the audience who want to answer on this? Yeah. Please introduce you.
Hello. Okay, my name is Wolf, and maybe it's the first and the last time I'm going to appear in public, because otherwise you're going to nail me down. But actually, I came here by purpose because I looked at the agenda of this conference, and it was your question, and that's I want to give you an answer. You have more than 130 male speakers, and you have 14 women speakers on this conference, and most of them are sitting here. And I think there's something wrong. I think you should go up and stay on the other panels. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you're completely right. So
please come next year. We'll change something. Lisa Suino.
Lisa and I come from Finland. We have a female president, free daycare, free nursery care, a lot of things offered to women, but only 2% of listed corporate executives are women, only 8% of board members are women, and the figure has been constantly diminishing during the last 10 years. So I think how to get more women on boards and to advance on their career, it doesn't start on intellectual level, it starts on a chemistry level, very primary biological level. I think women should learn to play with their enemies, and they should understand that if a woman across from me has bigger boobs, longer legs, brighter eyes and more brains, I should still be able to support them. And And women don't do the army, and men on the army, they look to cover, they learn to cover the expressions of their face. Their faces are not as emotional and vivid. And as soon as women who has more than I do, it shows on my face. And I'm constantly, every day, getting myself together and learning to support women that are brighter than me. And I think all of us, men and women, should do the same.
Thank you. Just one small reaction. First, there is a woman doing the army around the world, in Israel and some other countries. I think what we need is examples. Women are shy. They don't feel, they don't have the power and they don't have the decision to decide to be on board because they have some husbands which prefer them to be home and taking care of the kids. Do you know, IT is very important because behind the screen there is no differences. There is no veil, there is no abaya, and I was living in those countries. And that's a tool, a new tool we can use to put women on board.
Just one other point. I think you also make a case for critical mass, which is once there is critical mass in any minority group, those issues of not supporting each other start to go away. And so that's why this critical mass, 30% roughly or more, the research shows that that's a key tipping point. It's just critical. Is somehow you got to force into critical mass, and then those other issues diffuse.
Quick comment that leads to my question.
Who are you?
I'm sorry. John Gaunt from the Media Belgium. I come from a family with a 192-year military tradition, so a bit of testosterone there. My daughter brings her friend home, and I ask, how's your mom? Well, she's deployed. And one of the questions that I have is, in 10 years, now that, especially in the United States, there is a large population of women who have gone directly to war, how do you see that starting to affect how power is shared and done? Because until recently, when I say recently, I mean for about the last 5,000 years, all power and structure in nation states and or countries has been formed in the crucible of war. How do you, if you don't agree, the burden of data is on you. But how do you see this possibly changing now that women are having direct experience of command over literally life and death situations? And within 10 years, especially, they will be in positions of power. Thank you. How do you see that evolving in our countries?
Let me give others time to think. I'm not extremely optimistic, and I hate to say that, but I don't see the military unlike a lot of other sectors, which is women are deployed in the workforce, women are commanding, mid-level units, but at the top, the numbers just never change. And I do a lot of work with the Department of Defense and a lot of work with the Chief of Naval Operations, and there's the problem that I experience in the corporate world, I still see vividly in the military space, and I'm not confident that without this sort of forceful change that it's going to matter, and that's unfortunate.
Just to add, though, on another positive note, our team has been working a lot on the current situation in Haiti over the past 2 weeks and the response online to that. And it's been actually pretty incredible to see that almost everyone who we're working with on the government level has been women leadership in this area. And it's been just incredible mobilization that we've seen. So I don't know if that speaks to anything positive in the future.
The other aspect about Haiti that's interesting is the fact that the relief efforts now, they're finding that the food, the water, whatever, wasn't getting to where they needed it to get to, and a lot of the relief efforts have shifted now to funnel through women on the ground there, which is case in point.
Edith Capaton.
Thank you, Sophie, for such an important panel, and I do thank you for putting all these incredible women together on the panel to discuss these issues. I founded, and I'm running an organization that the whole goal is to bring more women and minorities, which are not represented very well on this panel, that's for next year, and in other panels, to technology, engineering, IT, and really try from a very young age through education, build in women confidence in themselves as learners. So when you ask what is our vision for the next decade and what can we do to fix the situation, I would love to see in 10 years a lot more women on panels that are about user-centric experiences and technology innovation. And what I really believe we have to do is to start very, very young in putting women in experiences when they build stuff, when they invent, when they collaborate with other women, when they collaborate with other men, with men that are smarter than them and expert, with women that are smarter than them and expert, and really figure out how to do innovation, creativity, problem-solving, system thinking, and figuring out really big problems, solve problems from a very, very young age. And I wonder, none of you yet, and I'm sure you all have a lot of smart things to say about this, touch the issue of education and what can we do to build these powerful learning experiences for women to discover that leadership and that wisdom and capabilities that they have in a technological society that is elastic and flexible, virtual, social, highly social. Women are going to shine in a way that in 10 years there will be men standing here Marcel will lead the session, and they will say, "Whoa, what skills do we need to develop to fit?"
Thank you, Edith. Thank you.
But if I may, maybe before the next speaker, let's not concentrate only on the girls. Let's also concentrate on the boys, and let's. Good, great, fantastic, absolutely. And then I think we also should not ignore that since this is a biological thing, the women still bear the children. We have to recognize that there is a strong bond between the woman and the child, and that can also not be ignored. So that's why I think besides the education, the facilitation is also a very important topic and remains to stay a topic.
Since women are much more pragmatic than men, I want you to ask for 2 steps we should do within the next 2 years, right now. Cecilia, what would you do? What are the next points? Sorry but we should go.
Of course. For the next 2 years, I think first is giving confidence to the women. For that, we have to help them, definitely. Definitely to bring them knowledge. And I'm talking not only about our countries, but bring knowledge to all those countries where women doesn't have the right to have the knowledge. So I think that through all the tools we have today is to help them to take confidence, to believe in the future and to work and really help them the most that we can. I think that's the first step that we can do. And then facilitate, their work and be equal in what they want. A woman in France is not earning, for the same job, is not earning the same money as a man. And I think it's everywhere. So that's an important step as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Two things. I would start at the top and at the bottom. At the top, I would go to a set of leading companies, multinational companies, and I would get CEO commitment to move their numbers at the board level and their senior management. They can do it, and I would seek that commitment. And if they would do it, it would make a huge difference. That's at the top. At the bottom, and bottom's not right, really the right term, but this deals with women entrepreneurs around the world, whether it is micro enterprises or small and medium-sized enterprises. Women entrepreneurs tend to be stuck for whatever reason. And I think really through the social media and technology, there is a fabulous opportunity to open that world of women to women and men who want to lend their expertise, lend their money, lend their mentoring to help unstick those women entrepreneurs, because I really believe there's an enormous economic engine there.
And we've realized exactly the same. Our company is 320,000 people, and so we take a look at clearly what talent is in the pipeline and where do people get stuck. And generally, we have more young women graduates come in than men, but then a few years later, also as childbearing age starts, they get stuck. And this is between the 30 and 40 age. So we do a lot, and this is where we really need to concentrate in order to make sure these talented women come back and have a work environment where they can have a career and also have children at the same time. And by knowing exactly what it is and working those issues right there, we can do more than anywhere else. Other than Edith's point, where I totally agree, we do a lot of work with the young children to ensure that they understand this can be a very exciting field also in computing, IT, and so that they don't think all you do is write code or whatever.
I thought that was a really excellent point, and I think critical mass and connection. We were talking before about critical mass. I had never heard the number 30 before there, but gosh, we have 350 million people on Facebook. We know who's interested in this topic, who's driving change around the world. I think that's something that I personally would commit to all of you, that in the next year, that's something that I will do my best to drive forward, is connecting women around the world who are interested in driving change together.
Yeah, I would also try being pragmatic, try to put a couple of male role models who have been successful in bringing women up to the top ranks. I think that would help a lot. And I think bringing the facts on the table. The crisis has proven, as Beth already mentioned, that some companies get better through the crisis where we have mixed management teams. So let's put these facts on the table and let's use these facts.
Thank you, Ria. I see Elizabeth Koppinger from Real.
I just wanted, there's a couple of things that happened in the United States that I think, oh, can you hear me? Okay, there's one thing that happened in the United States that I think doesn't really get as much credit as it should is something called Title IX, and that was something that forced schools to have equal sports programs for males and females. And I think it has made a huge difference because at an early age, young women learn to compete. They learn the joy of competition. They learn how to work on teams. They learn how to become leaders. And I compete on a sports team, and you can practically draw a line down across the age of pre-Title IX and post-Title IX women. The attitude of the women who have been able to compete throughout their lives is dramatic, and I think it's part of learning power, and I think that's one thing that should not be underestimated and should really be taken seriously.
You mean we have to learn competition?
We need to learn to compete and how much fun it is to compete.
Okay.
I have to agree that it's a social thing also. When we have management meetings, the guys used to like we had one in Hungary, and so the guys met at 4 a.m. to do a half marathon before the meeting, and I just ran with them. I was the only one, so there were 20 of us. I was the only woman running with these 19 guys a half marathon before the meeting started, but it's just, again, it's a total imbalance, but you're part of a discussion, and when you're behaving a little bit more like them. I didn't do it to be like them just because I like it, but it's absolutely true in sports.
So maybe sport is a good way to train us.
It is. No, it's certainly one way.
Let's do sport.
It's one way.
But I would like, maybe one warning. Let's not try to copy.
No. I do that every day, so to me it's not a big deal, but it's being part of the game.
Let's make sure that we keep our feminine qualities, because I think it's exactly that combination of the male and the female qualities that brings the best out of those teams.
Great.
Hi, my name is Sharona Justman. And I've been an entrepreneur and employer for these past 25 years with tons of credentials, like many of the people here in the audience. And the one thing that, or many things that come to mind, but dominantly in the world of business, there are three things that I'd like to add to this conversation, and that's women who are successful in their business need support. The PR element can't be overlooked to achieve some notoriety, some name recognition and familiarity, and some regularity of exposure. When we look at certain executives, they are often referenced or put on panels, and where many of the women on this panel, I've not heard of you except for here at this, and I'm glad to be exposed to you. I would like to know that we develop a mechanism to recommend other women when we are in positions of power, to suggest a colleague to get on a board when our opinion is asked, and many of us are asked, and that we choose to look at quality and speak to abilities of a person, and yes, take a private bias, if all things being equal, select the woman to achieve that parity, but to use our positions to cause the norm to be quality over gender, and then raise the bar so that what we want to talk about is not what is a woman's issue, but what is a societal issue, whether it's childcare or fair pay or fair play. And in such doing it, we can then make the name of a woman executive a familiar term, let her be quoted, let her be the normal, and then we don't need to stand out so differently.
Thank you very much.
Okay, can I ask one more comment to the quality, though, concern? And that is, I think we have to be aware that how people perceive quality, their stereotyping matters. And so oftentimes, two equally qualified candidates won't be perceived as equally qualified if your stereotyping is causing you to devalue gender. So.
Please. you're waiting so long.
My name is Rebecca Norlander. I am at Microsoft Corporation. First, thank you for all of your time and perspectives today. It's great that you could join us and give us something to think about, or at least some encouragement to keep going and doing what we're doing. Second, somebody had asked about finding more people to put women entrepreneurs into business. I'm on the board of directors for something called Illuminate Ventures. They're getting ready to launch in the Bay Area, and it's actually run by a woman named Cindy Padnos, who has a pretty long VC CV as her background. And the focus of that is going to be to find businesses, especially tech businesses, that are founded or co-founded by women. Obviously, it won't be all of the things that we put in the portfolio, but it will be something that we look for and something that we encourage. And she's working with organizations in the Bay Area to at least kind of get the spark going and put the word out on the street so that more women are interested. I'd be happy to give you her details, and so maybe she could participate in DLD. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
There's actually a lot of great movements, or especially organizations that we've seen online. At Facebook, we're huge supporters of an organization called Donors Choose, where teachers in underprivileged schools all over the country can say that they want to do something special with their class or teach something special, and you can support an individual classroom. I think Kiva, we're seeing another site called Vitana that's just starting, where you can actually sponsor someone in a developing country to go through graduate education. So I think there's just a lot of tremendous ways that we can, we can make an impact.
So Claudia Baumhofer, Audio Hörverlag.
So yeah, I'm Claudia Baumhofer. Talking by myself about women at the top. I asked a neuro physics science before, do you have a tip? What should I say? Or is there anything we should know? And he said, what is the problem of women? And he said, women. He said, the problem of women are men who are taller than 1.90 meters high, right-handed, and have studied a technical job, because they are the icons of every society in the Western world. And because they are the icons, they are the orientation, and all the other things are not used so far. And the society couldn't be successful, really successful, if they don't use the very big other part. And I think this is one of the questions we have to ask ourselves. How long can we go on in this way? I mean, if you see the situation in Germany, the CEOs on the top, I mean, this is like in the third world. This is, and don't think because just we have this chancellor, she's a woman, we have a gay foreign minister, so it looks very good by the democratic situation in Germany, but that's not. And I think this is an interesting idea to go back and ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Remember the picture? Jeffy,
we only
remember
have
the
2
picture?
minutes left, so
the picture in the presentation that I normally show, because they all look the same. And it's true, they are exactly.
So we have to hurry. Please, final
quickly.
question.
There's 2 men behind me, so I'll make sure to speak really quickly. First of all, thank you. There is a part of me that was really antsy about this panel for the reasons that were already mentioned before. My name is Tikva Morawati. I come to you from a startup that hasn't launched yet in New York, and I also run an O'Reilly media event out of New York where I actually curate speakers. Our last event had, by no foresight, half of our speakers were female. What I want to say is that working and I work with 22 men. I'm the only woman. There's me and the HR lady. And I happen to really love working with men. I happen to find myself very at peace. They're not very gossipy. They're very analytical, and that works well for me. What I'm noticing for the first time working with in a male-dominated environment, though, is they've got ways of communicating that I just knowing about, having those distinctions really help me communicate with them. And I'm also seeing as a female where I don't think we're equal. I think we should take that out of our language that we're equal. I think our rights should be equal, but I think fundamentally we communicate and we think about the world differently, and I think that together is an incredible dynamic. And I think when we talk, and I think when we talk about this issue, I think we should talk about it like that. And I really appreciate you thinking in terms of the future, and like that's the kind of, and Randi as well, like your commitment. Like you don't know what you're going to do right in the next year, but you're committed to doing something, and I think that's what there is to do. And what I've taken away from this conversation is that I need to speak to my employers and just stand for other females working in the company, and also standing up for myself and females and saying, here's what we can contribute, you know? So thank you very much.
That's great. So the last word we give to men now. Look, there are two men standing, and they should.
I wanted to add this. So I'm David Kenny. I'm with Publicis Group. I run half of the company, so 17,000 people, but first started my own. I do have, out of 7 people who report to me, 3 are women. I want to be clear, and I chose all of these 7 CEOs. I did not choose them because they were women or because of a target. I chose them because they were the best. And I worry a little bit about looking at the numbers. I know why we have to, but to me, what's important is there be transparency about decisions. And when we were a little company, I always was clear. I chose this person and this is why. That helped everyone know. So to me, I think there needs to be transparency and performance assessments that are fair and honest. And that will help women because in many cases, they are better. The second part, which has been more problematic to me, one of the women runs China. That took 2 years to find. Africa is impossible. The Middle East is impossible. This is a relatively white panel. It's a relatively white audience. I'm concerned about women from the whole world. I think the programming is a disaster, and I don't know what we're going to do about it. Simple things, but if you've got bigger ideas, I certainly have passion. We're missing half the people in 2/3 of the world.
Thank you very much. Great comment. Great, yeah, please give very. Last word, Michael Conrad, dear DLD friend.
Thanks for introducing me. I'm 1 meter 86 and only go over 190 when I have my cowboy boots on. So I hope I've never intimidated women. We grew women in leadership in our organization at Leo Burnett. But since 5 years, I've helped starting a school on leadership. It's a global school that covers almost all communication industries. It's in Berlin. We have about 25% women. Only. We don't have enough applications. It's an executive MBA. The women that come are as intimidated in this area of leadership in the creative world as men. But when they walk out and when I see what they have achieved now in their organizations as leaders, I feel very good. So we need more applications of women, and so that is what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. One last word, Ria.
Well, I would hope in 10 years' time we'll be here back again and we have a colorful room with not just white women, more white women, but also colored women. And I'll keep on supporting that. I'm passionate about it. So,
Cecilia?
Just 2 numbers to think about. In France, the school for judge, it's 90% women studying. In my foundation, we're 80% women.
Good.
So where's the difference? Where's the problem?
Beth?
I guess the only point I would like to reinforce is when we talk about quality, we talk about the quality of the individual. There's also a quality of the collective. And the quality of a homogeneous collective is lesser than a diverse quality. So you have to look at both elements for the diversity of perspectives.
Totally. Inclusivity, just be inclusive. And that doesn't matter. Again, it's not a gender question only.
Yeah, that's right. I think a lot of the issues that I work with on a daily basis aren't just women's issues. They're issues of people in general just connecting around the world and driving together to make change. And
thank you very much. Now we have the pleasure to go to Randi's concert. Let's go upstairs.